Right now it's about 20 degrees out, and I'm pretty sure my testicles just migrated to my armpits, but there's really nowhere I'd rather be. This is Jason Drives. I'm driving the world's only handmade Runge FF004 Flyer. It's got a Porsche drivetrain from an old 356, some various VW bits here and there, but it's all totally handmade, and it's fantastic. So what's especially interesting about this particular car, and all the cars that Chris is building in his little workshop, they're descendants of a very particular kind of car that hasn't really existed since the end of World War II. And this particular kind of car has in its history Volkswagen, and is really the genesis of where Porsche came from, whether or not Porsche enthusiasts want to admit it or not. Right after World War II, things didn't go that hot for the Germans. But what they did have was a lot of scrap aluminum from the aircraft industry, and a whole bunch of old chassis and engines and cars, mostly that were Volkswagen Kubelwagens, the Jeep version of the Beetle that was made all throughout World War II by the Germans. They would hand hammer bodies, and these bodies were often beautifully aerodynamic in a kind of naive folk aerodynamic way. They didn't have wind tunnels or anything like that, so they just kind of did it the way that just felt right. And seeing these old post-World War II VW specials is what inspired Chris to realize that he might be able to build a car like that himself. Chris has a fascinating history. He's an ex-pro snowboarder, among other things, but he's always loved cars, and he's always had a family that did a lot with cars. So he saw what these guys used to do and realized if a guy can build a car body by hammering aluminum over a tree stump, I could probably figure out how to do that myself. And he did. And the results are amazing. So it starts, I guess, with you draw a picture, right?
Yeah, typically I sketch something out. Once I get a design that I like and I can see it on paper, try to get it from all vantage points, views, and then I go into building a wooden buck. The wooden buck is basically a skeleton that gives us the general shape of a car.
Oh, okay.
So I'll take paper, I'll lay it over the shape, slice it up until it lays uniformed to the round compound curves of what you see here, and then I translate that into metal.
Do you make your own chassis as well?
I do.
Let's see one of those. You're not using a VW pan or a Porsche pan. You're making this all on your own with, what is this, like roll cage grade tubing?
Yeah, it's a mild steel that we used on this one.
Now, how long would it take to get from the wooden buck to making this chassis?
That's an interesting question because I've designed the chassis that's interchangeable with my different models. So I have 3 or 4 different designs that'll fit right onto this chassis. So the buck drawings take me a couple weeks. This takes me about 4 to 6 weeks.
What's the next step when it comes to making the body?
So we go back to the buck and we take measurements off the buck of where the belly pan will end up. And then we start shaping the aluminum tubing.
You take the buck, you're bending tubes to match the ribs on the buck, and what you end up with is like a wireframe version of what the car will look like.
Yeah, it doesn't provide structural support necessarily, but it stiffens up the entire skin that goes over it, and it makes it very rigid.
How do you go from a flat sheet of aluminum to something that fits these fairly complicated compound curves here?
Yeah, so like we mentioned earlier, I'll take and make a paper template first. The tools that I have access to will direct me to make a panel in sections and then weld it together.
Everything you're doing is so connected, and there's so little between you and the machine. And I know that's a cliche that gets thrown around a lot, but holy hell, is it true? You can't get any more connected with this machine unless you accidentally make a mistake and sit on the gear shift. There's nothing in between you and the way this car is actually running and working. Everything is super direct and super mechanical. The engine is actually bigger than a regular Porsche 356 engine, which it's based on. It's making about 120 to 130 horsepower, and that doesn't sound like a whole lot of power until you remember this car weighs about 1,200 pounds. When you lay on it, it fucking goes. You can feel it right in your gut, like a robot is really pissed at you and takes his big mechanical fist and just pounds you in the small of the back. But it's also not too much power, like so many cars. It's just that right amount, where you can really wring it out and you're not going crazy fast or you're gonna get dead or your license revoked. The gearbox has everything inside it flipped, so it's mid-engine. So the balance is actually really nice. You'll get a little oversteer if you're really pushing it, but it's pretty easy to catch. He's got his own special suspension setup in the front, and he's got his own like rubber bump stop setup that actually provides a little bit of the springing as well. And even though we're sitting on metal seats that are basically like tractor seats, it's actually not as punishing as you think. When Chris builds these cars, he says it takes him about 7 months to do a car. And I've played with metal myself, and I suck at it pretty dramatically, but I kind of want to know how someone with a real gift for it does it. So, luckily, Chris said he's going to show me. This has all been amazing. I'm stunned that we went from a flat piece of metal and just hammering and these two tools to get something that actually looks like this now. So Chris, thanks again for everything. It's been a real pleasure. This has been a super big treat for me to actually drive these cars and see how they're made. For everybody else watching out there, remember, subscribe to the Jalopnik channel because we appreciate it, and thanks for watching. I don't have any idea why anybody would spend money on like a Veyron or any supercar with, 1,000 horsepower, because there's no way in hell you're getting more fun out of it than you would out of something like this. Why do rich people waste their money on supercars when they can find amazing artisans like this and have them hand make something that's just for them? If you want perfection, then sure, buy your Veyron or whatever the hell. But if you want soul or something that actually matters, where you can feel the love of a person, something like this gets every little bit of that.